artists behind the epic melodies, songs, and beats. Celebrating the best new music from around the world. This is the A State of Trance podcast.
What's up? My name is Ruben Ronde and welcome to a new A State of Trance podcast. Within the studio today, a man that has been here before, and we had a very long and brief talk. I think it was about 2 years ago or last year somewhere. Welcome, John Askew.
Nice to be here.
How you doing?
I'm very good, thanks. Yeah, I'm very
good. Like I said, we already did a massive podcast about, I actually referred about this last week with someone on the podcast as well, that they had to check it out, how you were planning all of your different jobs and tasks with color codes and boards and stuff like that. So if you want to hear about the history of how John got into what he's doing right now, make sure to scroll back and check the old podcast, because today we're going to talk about a room full of pros and cons.
Yes.
The brand new album, it's out now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start at the very beginning. Why? Because this is a question a lot of people are actually wondering. Why are you still doing albums in these time? Where a TikTok post sometimes even beats releasing a full track.
It's a good question. And I think doing an album sort of goes against all advice and all streaming trends.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if you allow stuff like that to sort of, if you allow too much strategy to influence your art, at what stage do you find your art is being compromised?
Yeah.
And even though putting out a 15-track album might mean the streaming numbers are going to be less, because every single person whose opinion I admire and trust advised me to not make the album longer than 10 or 11 tracks.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this album needed those 15 tracks to tell the story that I wanted to tell. And also, regardless of how many streams it does and how many people actually listen to it, when they put me in a hole in the ground, this will be the thing that carries my name indefinitely in the future. And this is what I want left behind. Now, that said, whether I do another album after this, I'm not so sure.
All right, I have actually a lot of questions just out of the answer that you just gave, because first of all, that you're saying that you need to tell a story. What is the story that you want to tell? Because you can tell a story in 3 tracks as well, if you look at it like that.
You can. I'm older. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I'm still someone who likes listening to albums end to end. And I think albums that are put together in a way that tells a journey from the start to end, and listening to an individual track off the album is great, but when you hear it in the context that it was meant, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, these classic big albums. Yeah. And Nirvana, Nevermind. When you listen to individual tracks, they're great. But when you listen to the flow, the band obviously sat there and deliberated for a long time over which track should go where to have a great flow. So, it's all about the stream edit that's 3 minutes long and that's really punchy and blah blah blah. But at the same time, you know what? If you're going to the gym or you're going to the car, on a car journey or whatever, you want something a bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that people will press play and have the patience to be there for the, whatever it is, 65, 70 minutes running time.
Yeah.
Because I think when you get to the end point, you'll get it.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Because actually, when you're telling this story, I go back into the past when you would actually put in a CD and just listen to the whole thing instead of listening to playlists right now. Because I think a lot of people listen to playlists because they're lazy to do their own research to music. So you just trust the curator to guess what you're liking or suggesting you what to like, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So,
I mean, look, you can look through DJ compilation albums, mix albums on Spotify, and you look through these albums and there's loads of tracks with 50,000 streams, and then there's one or two in the middle of a DJ mix compilation So they're not singles on an artist album. They're just
cuts.
They're just cuts, right? And yet there's 2 tracks in the middle that have got 500,000. And, people have listened to the albums. Those are the 2 tracks that have resonated with everyone. And they're the 2 tracks that everyone's added to their own individual playlists and listened to again and again and again.
Yeah.
And I get it. And I'm anticipating people to do that with this. It's not like you can't enjoy the music unless you listen to it from start to end.
Yeah.
There are a lot of tracks on there that people will be familiar with because they were singles before the album, and they'll probably want to extract those. But the album is being presented in 2 different formats. One is these 15 tracks as the stream edits, and then one is the 15 tracks mixed.
Okay.
And it's not mixed in a DJ sense. It's sort of put together.
It's blended.
Yeah. So and that I hope people will see as a separate experience.
Mm-hmm. So that's why you decided, okay, there's a room full of pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
These are the pros of doing an album, and these are the cons of doing an album.
Yeah.
And then one side that you just told us in the very first answer that you gave, the one of the pros is that this is an embodiment, your story that you will take into your grave, basically. And also, I guess, that you can take on touring or stuff like that. So there's a pros and cons. There's a lot of pros and cons in doing an album.
Yeah, I mean, pros and cons is, I think we talked about this earlier on, and,
we've been talking a lot. We could have recorded at least like a 5-hour podcast.
We could. I mean, I do love our conversations, I have to say. Yeah. But, this year is 30 years DJing for me. And so it feels quite right to be releasing this album this year. And the reason why this album is called A Room Full of Pros and Cons is because the term pros and cons in English means the good things and the bad things. But also the slang of pros is essentially, prostitutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not professional.
Yeah, professionals.
Yeah.
And cons is convicts, right?
Okay.
As in criminals, right?
Oh, that explains the artwork.
Now it's
Wow.
Slightly it's a play on words, but the reason why it's called A Room Full of Pros and Cons, it's predominantly about good things and bad things.
Yeah.
And it's my saying that after 30 years of working in the music industry, not just as a DJ, but as a manager, a label owner, A&R, club promoter, booking agent, I've been involved
producer.
Producer. I've been involved in every aspect of the electronic music scene. And, and I would say the music industry is a room full of pros and cons. It is. Yeah. There are good people, there are bad people, there are good things, there are bad things. And
there's criminals.
There really are some. I nearly swore there, but there are some criminals. Yeah,
it's interesting. Well, I didn't know that. Well, just you explaining this, it totally makes sense now. The artwork, because I said it earlier to you that I love the artwork. It's like it feels like a painting. It's like almost a Last Supper, or even like it could be a movie cover or something like that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah. How did you come up with that idea? Was it just because you were thinking about a room full of prostitutes and criminals that you were like, okay, I'm just going to sit in the middle here, be the centerpiece?
I mean, it was I guess after many, many years of being in the industry, the conversations you have in green rooms, backstage, after parties, they start to get a bit repetitive.
Yeah.
And
shallow.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about the same things over and over again, and you always do so with a sense of enthusiasm, because you don't want this person who sat next to you high on pills to be, to ruin their night, But at the same time, I've had the same conversations a billion times.
Yeah.
And so the artwork was a sort of piss take of that, essentially. Right?
I have to say, like, I don't know if we can do this, but the people behind the scene, maybe Ricardo or Susanna or Flores can put the artwork here, boom,
on the screen,
so you can actually see what it, because it's amazing. It, like I said, it could be. And now that you explain it, I totally get it.
Yeah.
So it's like a green room with a lot of weird people just blabbing your ears off, and you're sitting in the middle, like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
But after all these years, and explaining all of this, are you still enthusiastic to work in this music industry?
Of course.
Or where do you get your passion from to keep on going with, like I said, all the shallowness, all the repetitive talking? You've seen the coming and going of so many different artists, and they all think that they're the best artists on the planet, and
it's the music. The music is the main driving component, and you have different calibers of rock stars in this scene. Some that blow up in a very small amount of time, and they suddenly are ginormous. But have they got the longevity to go long game?
Yeah.
And then you have the icons who have these 30, 40 year long periods of just being absolutely at the top, who are very good at navigating and evolving to adapt to trends or whatever. So, there are good things and bad things. I'm dealing with good and bad things every single day that I turn up to work.
Yeah.
But it's the music that is the reason why I'm still absolutely fine dealing with all the bad things.
Yeah.
Because I think the music has never been better than it is right now. And I feel like the sound that I'm making, playing in my DJ sets, the sound that I'm playing right now in 2024 is the sound that I've been hoping to achieve, if you like, for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And if you say, okay, but what's different about the sound that you're playing or making now to 4 years ago, I'd say it's a refined production. It's a fusion of like really quite hard tech trance, psytrance, and techno.
Yeah.
It's probably an amalgamation of those three things. And actually, as we were talking about earlier on, you've got everyone from I Hate Models and loads of people in the techno scene playing these records now, which is great to see. It works on a number of different things, and genres have just disappeared.
They've vanished.
There are no genres.
No.
And I think a lot of the credit to that has to go to, the Charlotte DeWitts and Amelie Lenzes and stuff, who were the first ones to come out in techno and start playing Darude, Sandstorm, and
these old mic push records.
And the place would go bananas because they'd been restricted to no melodies for so many years, and it's like now it's like wow. And so now it's like it's not about turning up and playing a genre. It's not about being affiliated to necessarily a genre. It's about playing records with a certain attitude and a certain energy. And if you go on Beatport to do your record shopping, you'll find records with that attitude and energy in every genre.
Yeah. So right now, I think let's talk about that, because that's interesting, because we were talking about certain lineups earlier as well, that you see that that everything's just hard at the moment.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's happening? Because, not everything's hard. Like on one side you have let's say the Ben Burmers and Niels Hofmans and Joris Voorns, and the other side is just hard. There's nothing in between anymore.
Hard and fast.
Yeah.
Well, I think the explosion of the hard techno scene, which was already big going into COVID, but really blew up almost through COVID. And then when it came out, it was just monstrous. And now it's just, Klang Künstler and Kobasil and all these guys are just doing these ginormous shows, all the Unreal shows. And I think actually, I think that essentially that hard rock scene is the new punk.
The rebels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a group of, a swathe, a generation who were really pissed off at having 2 years of their lives taken away from them through COVID. And when they came out, they wanted to just scream and shout and go nuts. And this slower BPM, really polished production stuff just wasn't cutting it.
Yeah.
So it's now like you go to this and the BPMs are insane. They're super fast, but but also the music is not actually that well produced.
No,
it's
rough.
rough.
Very sampled.
It's rough. It's raw, and it's like you think, Christ, I would have produced that record differently. But then it's like, well, yeah, but that's not what the essence of that scene is.
It's the rebel. It's the heart.
It's the get rid of the rules.
Yeah.
It's like, who cares if it's well produced or not, as long as it smashes the dance floor.
Yeah.
And you know, you haven't seen a revolution like that, I don't think, since punk in the 70s.
Yeah.
It really is a kind of, can I swear?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like a fuck the system.
Yeah, it is. I think I would like to compare it to like, let's say 91, 2, 3 in the Netherlands. We had a hardcore coming in, IDT with Thunderdome and stuff like that, and which was also like a rebel movement. And from there on, all the music became more polished, you know. And then at a certain point, I guess the kids that are raging right now are the ones that grew up with listening to, let's say, the pop dance music, the Kaigos, I don't know, the pop songs, and they hate it. They want to get out there and just rage.
Yeah.
Just be angry and just dance their butts off. And
Yeah.
I don't even think the artist matters to them. It's just like going out there and just go as hard as they can.
Yeah. I mean, look,
I think that's awesome.
You got to think about all the other stuff, the cost of living, all the shit that is going on all over the world at the moment. When these kids go out, they want to scream and go bananas.
Yeah.
And you know, 128, 126 BPM
Doesn't cut it.
John Digweed shit isn't going to do that.
No.
You know, they want to go bananas for that 1 8-hour moment. They can forget about all the stuff in their life that is, and in the wider world, that is just causing them anxiety.
I love that you compare it to the punk rock ages, that because they came out of let's say that generation came out of that, their parents were listening to the Beatles and the I don't know, the Monkees, whatever it was. Everything was just and then it was like, okay, let's go.
And you know, you remember the punk rock was born out of a period where recessions, unemployment, like depression. It was a really dark time.
Yeah.
And the wealth divide between, you know, especially between let's say politicians and the working class, especially in the UK, was just a huge problem.
It's exactly where we are right now.
Yeah. It is true.
So it's just history repeating itself.
It is history repeating itself.
And the funny thing is that, okay, I'm going to be... so when I get a lot of these clips, you know, from Verknipt in the Amsterdam Arena, 30, 40,000 people and 7 in the morning. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly how we were with Trans Energy back in the days, or Thunderdome. And then you see a lot of comments like because in the past we had the trans purists and the techno purists are just saying like, this is not techno. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is, but
why do people always want to put things like in boxes? And it's a whole different discussion, but it's interesting to see that there are so many purists trying to hate on these kids having so much fun.
I think
it's weird.
I think what you find is a lot of the people who spend their time online whinging and moaning about stuff are actually the people that don't go out.
Yeah, that's true.
They're the ones who used to go out and want everything to be how it was when they were going out.
Yeah.
And they're living through social media and watching sets on YouTube, blah, 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 and making their own calls and blah, blah. You know, like at the end of the day, who cares about genres? Who cares about things having to be pigeonholed? You know, like I've seen it myself. I mean, I've been exposed to it myself. I've played sets in clubs and posted the set online and seen comments underneath saying, why did he play a techno track at 33 minutes in? It's like, it's not about analyzing it like that. It's about going with the energy of the dance floor and playing the right records at the right times to create the right vibe.
Yeah.
And if I need to play a techno record to sort of make it more heads down and groove and, you know, then
reset the dance floor. Yeah.
I mean, you know, when I was working with Paul Oakenfold, he really taught me a lot about, you know, when you play a huge record, it's like a record that you know is going to take the place to pieces. It's quite good to bring it down a little bit before, so that you get, you know, more impact. You know,
breather and then bam.
Yeah, DJs who come out and just play Beatport Top 10, and it's just banger, 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 banger. There's no variation. There's no, you know, it's not. There's no foreplay.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
interesting. Well, I love the movement that I'm seeing right now. Like these kids are really into dance music again, and I think that's for all of us. That's the most important thing, because what is better than having all these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids going to raves and have the best time with dance music.
Yeah,
I think that's the best thing. So interesting discussion right now. Let's go back to a room full of pros and cons, because that's the end why we're here. The album is done. How long did it take you to actually finish it? How many different versions did you create on before and already?
If I remember correctly, I think I sent you a version of the album probably about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so with my day-to-day work, I work a lot predominantly in management.
And being a family man.
I'm trying to be a family man, although I'm very much aware that my time as a father and a husband is constantly compromised and insufficient. It's not good enough, but there are only so many hours in the day, and this is the career path I've chosen, and I have to do it, right? But I think because I don't have as much studio time as I would like to have, I tend to just spend the first 2 weeks of January. I go away, just me, my studio, and
middle of the countryside
somewhere where there is no
cell reception,
nothing. Right, phone is off, and I work 15-hour days, maybe longer. And in that 2-week period, I will make all the music that I am going to release for that year, and then it's not finished, but it's sort of like 85 to 95% done, and then you go back and then it's tweaking.
Yeah.
So to go back to your question, I would say the album was finished a while ago, but this last January, I did make about 3 or 4 tracks, which then ended up being on the album as well. So I think from none of this material being done to it being finished was probably a 6-year period.
Wow.
But I think if I only produced music, I think I could probably make an album in about 6 months.
Yeah, because the time that you spend on other things rather than your own. Is then making music still sort of the escape for you to get away from other things?
If I won the lottery, I would make music all day, every day.
Yeah,
that's what I would.
That's
do.
the passion.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why?
Yeah, why would you prefer that over managing artists or? Why?
I think
asking the question is answering it.
You know the answer to that. I mean, like a room full of pros and cons. Yeah. I wouldn't have to deal with the cons.
Yeah,
a
room full of pros. There you go.
I would look. Making music is probably the most joyous thing I know, and having unbroken time in the studio is one of the greatest luxuries I could possibly experience. And January and February were always the shittest months of the year. They're always, for us living here in Europe, where the weather's atrocious, the number of daylight hours in the day is minimal.
There's not a lot of events.
There's nothing, right? Yeah. It's just so grim, and you have that wonderful build up to Christmas, and especially now with kids, like where there's that excitement. But then January was shit. But now I have this 2-week period in January. I get so excited in December, waiting for that moment.
Yeah,
and if I won the lottery, and I'm talking about a substantial amount of money, or substantial enough to not have to work.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would be doing. My day-to-day routine would be get up, coffee, take the dog for a couple of hour walk, and then come back and spend the rest of the day in the studio.
On the countryside somewhere.
Somewhere really, really beautiful and remote. Yeah. Mountains, lakes, no people.
Is that still a goal for you, or is it something that you... because I cannot imagine you not working as hard as you're doing, because you've been doing that since forever.
No, I'm in a good place at the moment. I'm loving my work. I'm loving my job, and the team for the company that I work for are all amazing. They're so cool. It's such a great environment to work in. So in the office where I work, There's two management companies. There's Bigfoot on one side, which is Joris Vaughan, Adam Bayer, drum code, Will Atkinson, Simon Patterson, Sarah Story, Juliet Fox. It's really cool, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side is Frame, who is Chase and Status and Patrick Topping and Eats Everything. So just being in that room is...
So it's non-stop creativity around you.
Yeah, and I love it. But there's just wonderful people to be around. And right now I'm loving being at work. So, but I wish I had more time for my family and more time to make music. Those are the only two complaints in life at the moment.
But still you decided to run 7 as well. Because you're already busy with those, and like, why are you still continuing doing 7 then?
Well, I needed a third and fourth job.
Yeah, because why not?
No,
let's being devil's advocate. If you would stop doing 7, you would create more time to create music, which would be more fun for yourself as well or spend more time with your family.
It's true, but then I would be releasing that music on another label and I wouldn't own it.
Yeah.
And
so the main reason is to hold on to your copyrights and be the owner of your own brand.
Essentially, I mean, I think pre-COVID to now, there has been a huge shift in the older balance between live revenue and music revenue to now, music being a really prevalent part of a shrewd business plan for someone wanting to get into music. And by that, I mean catalog acquisition, rights acquisition, publishing, those sorts of things, and building up catalog is, like Armada's Beat, company, which is doing exactly that. I think it's something that I encourage artists that I manage to really get into, because when you're 65 years old and you go, you know what, I'm kind of done with touring heavily around the world, even though there are some 65-year-olds out there still doing it and still rocking it, but I won't be one of them.
No.
Right?
No.
So when I think it's important to advise younger artists who can't think further than 1 week ahead to think about the future and to start building up something that is going to be your retirement fund. I don't have a pension, right? Mm-hmm. But my record labels and the music I'm signing is kind of like my long game pension.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's an important thing to say, because I know a lot of artists are signing away just because they think, I'm going to put out a record. That's the most important thing. They're signing away the rights forever and for the universe. Like, think about it a little bit more before you start doing that.
Absolutely. Perpetuity it's a word that I think needs further debate, whether it's morally okay to sign someone's, to insist on taking someone's rights. It's a topic of conversation that's worth discussion, but at the same time, if you are an artist and the label you're signing those rights to is a label that is really trustworthy, that accounts on time, that does...
Then it's in good hands.
Yeah.
And if you get the right reward for it in return, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, look, it takes, what is it, 60,000 records a week being released on Spotify.
Yeah.
How on earth are you supposed to, be a spike that stands up above all the rest? It's fucking impossible, right? So having a team of people who are going to push your records, who are primed, ready to pour more fuel on the fire if it starts burning, right?
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly important as well. So, okay, in some respects, I'll sign my record to you in perpetuity if I know you're going to be working for me, if you're going to be really pushing it, if I know that even though this record is now, you're still going to be exploiting it to my advantage without, compromising my brand integrity 2 years down the line.
Yeah. Again, a room full of pros and cons.
A room full of pros and cons. You can apply it to anything.
To everything. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think maybe we should do a podcast series.
Yeah, what?
Every week we're going to do a series.
Shall we? Listen, forget all the other guests. Let's just...
Forget the guests. It's fine. Talking about, well, we can go. I have so many questions for you, but I think the most important thing is the people that submitted questions through Instagram. So let's dive into those a little bit. Liam Turnbull, 1991, wants to know who's your favorite producer at the moment. That's a bit of a hard one to tell.
Probably Zach Sloff. Does Zach Sloff and David Forbes? I think weirdly, look, everybody knows David Forbes. He's been around for a very long time. But I think he's having this real, what's the right word? Renaissance moment. I think in the last 3 or 4 years, he's just blossomed.
Yeah.
And I think he and Zach Sloff are my two favorite producers right now. I think they are just astonishing. And every time I get an email in my inbox or a WhatsApp message with a new track from either of them, I am giddy with excitement. I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the interesting ones. I think David Forbes could easily play an event like Awakenings, for example.
Yeah.
Like the music that he produces is in between everything.
Yeah.
I think he deserves more of those kind of
I think
slots.
David Forbes deserves a lot more of everything.
Yeah.
Because he has put his time in.
Yeah.
And his music is amazing.
And also he produces progressive stuff, and which is absolutely mind-blowing as well. I know that he does a lot of ghost productions as well for some artists. I mean, he has it all.
He has it all.
And the frustrating thing is he can create 2 tunes in a day.
Well, do you know
he doesn't really care. He's like, okay, he's done.
There's a track on the album that I've asked him to now do a remix of.
Yeah.
And I said, look, man, I'm really sorry to do this to you, but it's the turnaround time. The deadline is super tight. So he said, send me the stems. I sent him the stems day before yesterday. I said, look, man. And he said, what is the deadline? And I said, it's as soon as possible, but the release is in October, right?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I'll have it done by Sunday.
Amazing.
It's like, wow.
Yeah, I remember
to have that confidence. You know?
I remember doing a collab with him and Rog and under his Hellstruck alias, and I remember that we sent him the stems, and the day after we would have like a finished project as well. It's insane.
Unbelievable.
Forbesy, you're an absolute legend.
Yeah, what a talent.
Okay, let's get the next one. When are you coming to Mexico City? The memories of A State of Trance 900 were absolutely amazing.
I actually am
Chatitos, by the way.
discussing a day. I had an offer to go and play a show with Giuseppe, which I think was going to be in January, which is now not happening. And now there is a discussion going on at the moment for Simon Patterson and I to go and do a show together as well. And I'm not sure if that's going to be feasible either, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah.
But I hope Simon will still go and do that date with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Do you still vividly remember that one? State of Trance 900?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was incredible.
I think that's one of the best crowds that ever experienced. Ever.
I mean, that has to be in top 3 gigs of all time.
Yeah, same.
And also just the whole, the adventure afterwards when we were, when we commandeered that, like a golf
cart. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and then we rolled it
with Ben Gold as well. I still have a very nice video on my phone in the lobby of the hotel, and you would hear piano music, and you see Will Atkinson. You see him like playing like this, and then I close up, and then you see that it's closed. The cover is closed, and he's just like sitting there. that was a good weekend.
That was one of the. Yeah, I mean, Mexico is amazing every time. I did a.
But that day, it was something else.
Electric.
Yeah,
it really was.
The funny thing is that I still sometimes with Cosmic Gate talk about this show, and they say this is also to them it was a top 3 show
of
ever
all time.
Yeah,
and actually, I went back to Mexico City 2 years ago and played a 9-hour set in this incredible. I can't remember what the venue was called, but it's like a club, but you almost had to go through an art studio to get to it or something. It was, oh my God, it was unbelievable. So, I mean, look, to answer the question, I would pay to come back and play in Mexico City, but it just has to be the right gig, and it has to be the right date, and it has to be the right venue with the right sound system. That's really important to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Brictona wants to know, will E1 London will be the home for the upcoming years of 7 events? E1 London.
I think
Taking place in November.
Yeah, so 7 London, Saturday the 30th of November at E1. We did a sold-out show there last year, which was great. And we are now doing it. Sorry, it was on the 24th of November last year. It's Saturday the 30th of November this year. I think this will probably be the last show that we do at E1. Not because I don't love it. I mean, I absolutely adore it. The sound system in there is incredible, and it's exactly our vibe. It's a warehouse. It's a techno venue, really. But I think it's important to not get stagnant. You know, like do 2 parties in a venue and then move on and do something else. So
there's a lot of pros and cons to that as well.
It's a lot of pros and cons to that as well. But there's also a lot of warehouse spaces in London or around the UK that need exploiting. And I think it's good for the people who are coming to our parties to have different experiences, to break the monotony of going to the same venues over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think this one at E1 will be our last. And therefore, if you've not experienced it, you really ought to come.
It's a good sales pitch right there, ladies and gentlemen. Ding, ding. Jan Wolf writes, the last few years have been amazing for 7. Where are we going to head next?
You know, as a label, the concept of the label was always just releasing the music of my 7 favorite artists. And we've evolved who's on the label for varying reasons. I think we talked about this in the last podcast. It's sort of like it's like a football team, you know. You evolve your players according to what's going on, and I really like the lineup at the moment. I love the fact that Nifra's joined. I was very happy that she said yes to that. I think that's.
How did you come up with asking her? Was it something that you were discussing with Mano or her manager, or?
Yeah, I mean, Will Atkinson, had been watching what she was doing, because obviously Will's quite connected with Maddox, and it's the same management team. And he sort of said, look, you really ought to start seeing what Nifra's doing, because her sound is kind of it's evolving, and it's heading more in line with what Maddox does, which is I guess a fusion between techno, rave, and kind of EDM, I guess, somewhere between those 3 things, but very powerful, pretty stripped back. And so I just started watching, and I just started following it. I was listening to sets, and, you know, she's got such a positive, you know, energy. And I don't think that's what we needed. We needed to bring in some new, positive, younger energy. And also that was a sound that wasn't represented in 7. And I think it's very important to have people, artists, producers in 7 who don't necessarily sound like each other, or at the very least, when you hear their tracks, you can tell whose track it is, or you can tell who's playing at that time. And there are some similarities between Simon and me. There are some similarities between Simon and Greg, or Greg and me, or, you know, there are some crossovers in different places. But Will Atkinson, his sound is totally unique. Nifra's sound is totally unique. I like to think that everybody's sound, you know, Activa's sound is different. You know, AA Meeting sound is different to anyone else. And I think it's, what it means is when you come to a 7 event, you are going to experience every flavor of trance, from Orchidea playing incredibly cool, you know, sort of very melodic, beautiful, like progressive music, building up through Activa, who takes it from that moment up a little bit, but it's still that, you know, it's very melodic, and then getting to the harder sounds, and then sort of ending with a finale of AA Meeting, which is like I guess we call it power trance. It's like big riff trance. It's sort of inspired by early kind of new energy stuff, I say.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions that I saw as well. Light Control wants to know, will you create more tracks like the ones you did back in the days with Subculture and Discover? I guess that's what you're doing now with Activa, with AA Meeting.
Yeah, I mean, AA Meeting is definitely a bit more melodic. It's a bit more uplifting. It's big riff trance. I mean, I still make those records myself. I think Aces High, which was on Our Mind, was in that
uplifting,
in that line. I think Afterburner was that sort of thing as well. But I mean, where my head is at right now, I'm kind of really into the techie stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, it's about approaching DJing like techno and layering tracks for a good 2 or 3 minutes, and the big moments coming from that. So I'm still going to make big riff trance. Yes, is the answer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is exactly what I think is one. I mean, you're still doing it. It's just like the AA meeting stuff is just brilliant. It's the same with Octiva, of course. He's still making fantastic music as well.
Yeah. He's such a funny one, Rob.
Yeah.
I mean, he's you know, his relationship with it is up and down. You know, he has good days and bad days in terms of, I think when he gets frustrated in the studio, it's a real kind of like, I don't know why I'm doing this, blah blah blah. But you know, I love that guy to bits. I really do, and I actually quite like his eccentric kind of you know, approach to everything. But I have to keep trying to keep him enthusiastic, because it would be heartbreaking if he was to give up. I love the music he makes. I think he is so talented, and you know, he just, I don't know, he just needs a bit more. I don't know what the right word is.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's looking to do more. He always complains when we get too many gigs. It's like, it's too many now. I don't want any, you know. But at the same time, I think he he's probably his biggest struggle is having to engage in social media.
Yeah.
He hates it.
Yeah.
He absolutely hates it.
And that's the downsides. The con of the days that we live in is that you absolutely need a social media presence. Otherwise, there's no way that you're going to make it as an artist.
No, I mean, we were talking about it earlier on today. Has social media now become more important than the music? And I would say yes.
Yeah.
And as a result, that is a heartbreaking thing. That is definitely a con.
Yeah. You know that a lot of clubs and festivals base their lineups on social media presence nowadays.
Of course.
And of course, because they are selling the tickets, because they are the ones that people see on socials. They are the ones that they want to see in the club as well. Rather than an anonymous person that releases something on Spotify and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, in the old days, it was, I'm a promoter, I'll do all the promoting. You're the DJ, you turn up and do the DJ.
Now you have to promote the events that you're playing.
Now a lot of promoters put in the contract that you have to do X number of social media posts to help promote it. And I get that.
Yeah.
Because no one as an artist wants to turn up and play to a half full room, right?
No.
So it's in your best interest to promote and get behind the shows that you're playing. But I do think that social media being more important than the music can then start to affect how you approach the music.
Yeah. Because then you put more time on a post on socials than you sit in the studio making music.
Yeah, but also I think it can affect how you know, what music you release. And, you know, it's sort of like, it's not just make a track, love that track, play it out a few times, tweak it, you know, until it's blowing up every time you play it. It's now more, a lot of people are like, you know, is it going to work on TikTok?
Yeah.
Is it going to blow up on TikTok? Is it going to drive a shitload of attention from TikTok? And if not, is it worth doing? Yeah. I mean, this is, you know, I have this conversation with younger producers all the time, and this is how they think about it. And it's like, wow. What?
And that's also how a lot of labels do their A&R nowadays.
Of course.
They see a song which has 2 million plays on TikTok and they're like, hey, this is working, let's sign this.
Yeah.
Rather than signing a track, putting time and money in it to get it to 2 million plays. They already want to have like a certain achievement done before signing it.
I mean, you know,
which is a recent thing.
Listen, I totally get it. I mean, from an A&R perspective, and for those of you that don't know, A&R is the
artist and repertoire. Yeah.
Artist and repertoire. It's finding the music, making the music right, and then signing it right, and then nurturing those artists to develop them into hopefully being successful things for the label that you work for, right?
Yeah.
So I get it from a major record label perspective. Why wouldn't they have everyone just searching constantly on TikTok to see what blows up? Because then what you're doing is you're not signing music hoping that you can develop a hunger for people to listen to it and to stream it on Spotify, Deezer, Apple. You're taking a record that's already being streamed a shitload on TikTok or SoundCloud. And so you're not having to start the fire. You're just having to pour fuel on a fire that's already raging. Yeah. And of course, why wouldn't you adopt that as a sort of standard operating procedure? It makes total sense.
Yeah. So there you go. That social media post is potentially more important than writing a good tune.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but that said, there's pros and cons to that as well.
Pros and cons, and music is subjective.
Yeah,
you know, I wasn't a fan of Barbie Girl, but it was a massive global hit.
Yeah,
and I can understand why. And I think there's a lot of shit that blows up on TikTok that is huge, absolutely huge. But I can't stand it. It's not my kind of thing. But it's just the way it is. And I think you can either sit there and whinge and complain about it, or you can go with the flow of everything, but navigate it in your own particular way that enables you to retain brand integrity and honesty and sincerity. Because those three things, if you don't have those, I don't want to work with you.
Yeah,
I you have to have that as an artist.
Yeah. Again, the pros and cons of social media.
It's pros and cons.
Because I mean, what you're saying right now is that it's a pro, but it's also a con, but it's mostly a pro because back in the days when you would release a tune, it's going to be released on vinyl. There was 500 copies, or let's say 1,000 copies. Those were the people that listened to it and knew what it was, but no one else would know it.
Yeah.
So how do you reach an audience besides that?
It's true.
And I love social media also, just following producers, Ableton experts. You know, I get so much information out of that as well. So on one side, I absolutely hate it because I don't like to post a lot of stuff on social media. But on the other side, you have so much knowledge that you can just learn. Also from newer generations that they're coming in with these small tips and bits and pieces. And I'm like, holy shit, is that how you layer a certain lead? Or that's how you use a compression? Or that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it, to be honest. The only thing that I think that needs monitoring is the stuff we've already talked about, you know, it affecting your music strategy and what's going on in your heart maybe a little bit. And then also I think it's important to monitor, the mental health side. And by that, I mean an artist who blows up really quickly, who's 22 years old, who doesn't really have the social and just life maturity to understand that a lot of this shit is not real, right?
Yeah.
And they blow up and they have 2 or 3 years of just being up there. And then when the industry is done with them, they spit them out. And then suddenly they base their self-worth on what's going on social media. Hang on, why am I not getting enough likes on this? Yeah. People now don't like me.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you have to, as a manager, you're also like a parent in a way. Yeah. You have to explain that that's not the case. It's just not the case.
Yeah. I think what I did is just to switch off that you can't see it yourself how much likes you have on a post. So I don't base my content on the amount of likes because I can just post whatever I like to post rather than to just refreshing all the time to see how much likes a post have.
Yeah.
For me, that was a massive step in mental health.
Yeah, I think mental health is a topic that needs way more discussion in the music industry, not just the electronic industry, the music industry. We've talked about this quite a lot. I've done a couple of other interviews recently where this was a big component of the discussion. And I think, does anybody know what phone number they can call or what website they can go to that has someone at the other end who understands everything about the life of a touring artist or a producer or a manager or anything in electronic music where you might succumb to the pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there is enough help. And I think, I've said this before, managers, record labels, anyone who has a financial vested interest in an artist has a duty of care to keep an eye on them.
Responsibility. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why, with Simon Patterson, for example, we made the call that to he has to stop touring. He has to until he has been through, a substantial period.
XYZ, yeah.
And now he's a year later, and now we're he life would be over for him if he didn't have music and an outlet to play music. But now we're approaching everything in a far more diplomatic way. But if he's not touring, you as management are not making any money, but you're still having to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it takes someone with a moral compass in a defined direction to be able to always say, no, this is what's right. We're not going for the money. We're going for this because we're dealing with someone's life here. So,
But that's a hard call to do because, everything is on this planet is based on monetary value. So that's a whole different discussion, of course, but
it is. But if you do something that is morally questionable, I find it keeps you awake at night, and I don't want sleepless nights because my working day is too long. So yeah, if there's anyone out there that's having these problems and stuff, get in touch with the Ruben and John podcast.
Yeah, I think we can actually start one by now. All right, let's cut because I think we're talking way too long already.
Yeah, sorry.
But I always enjoy the talks with you. There's so much knowledge coming out of you, so that's great to hear, man. Thank you for answering all these questions again.
Pleasure.
A massive congratulations once again on a room full of pros and cons, which we found out that is basically the purpose of life.
Yeah.
And, everything has pros and cons. And we're a room full. There's some idiots. There's some nice people. Just have to make sure you have the right one on your side.
Yin yang, the balance of life.
That's it is. Well, what better way to close this podcast? Thank you, John, once again. Thank you so much for listening and watching this podcast. And we're going to be back with a new one very soon. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. Check all previous episodes on YouTube or your favorite podcast portal.